Good morning, everybody. This is Matt Hinds, and this is the Triple Bottom Line. This is the first episode of this show that I'm going to start to feature. And I'm not going to get too much into what the show is about. I want to jump right into something that pertains to the Triple Bottom Line, which is city design. And so I am I have a degree in urban policy and planning from Tufts University, and I'm not working in the field, but this is something that I am really interested in. I kind of, as a hobby, one thing that I like to do is I like to draw these graphics. I like to try to imagine, what if we could start over and build a brand new city, knowing what we know now about the best practices around urban design. What would this look like? What would be the optimal design? And in particular, I think one of the biggest public design elements and foundational design elements to a city is the transportation network. And I want to talk to you about some of the features of this picture that I've drawn here, and keeping in mind that this is totally idealistic. This is if you could totally start over, and the reality is this isn't going to happen. I mean, I think it would be really cool in places that are rapidly developing, like in Texas and California. I think you could do this. You could start a brand new city and say, okay, we're gonna allocate this land, and we're gonna prepare to have up to 1 million people live in this city. Or pick the number of people that you want. It doesn't have to be that big of a city. But we're gonna start from scratch, and we're gonna do this with a few design elements in mind. And what would those design elements be? We can debate that. I would love to have that debate. But there are a few things just from my own observations and just trying to get around as a pedestrian, as a bicyclist, and as a driver, as somebody who, this is just, like I said, it's kind of a hobby for me. It's fun to think about. This is my perspective. So, first of all, there are a number of different ways that you can design a city, and I guess the geometric theme here is sort of like a web, something that's radiating. It's kind of like tree, it's branching off. And you see the very dark line here that's outlined in green. Well, this is going to be your freeway, the way that you get in and out of the city. And you can see that it's coming through on both ends. Now, I guess I should say as an aside, one of the things that I think is really unfortunate that we did throughout America when we were designing and building our highways was that oftentimes we brought the highway right through the heart of the town or the city. And because there was so much of a total buy-in for designing cities around the car, whereas before the car, a city grew around a river, or it grew around whatever the major industry was. But since then, cities have grown around the freeway, and they go on either side of the freeway. And the unfortunate thing is that if you could measure the value of the land that's right in the center of the city, measure in acres how much space that freeway is taking up, and then calculate the amount of property value, it's unbelievable how many billions of dollars in property value we right now have as just a freeway, where the value of the freeway does not necessarily decrease if you did not have it running through the middle of the city. So what if you had a city that, I'll draw off to the side here. This is the center of the city where all the urban scapes are and all the desirable elements of the city are. Well, what if your freeway just ran here and it ran on the outside of the highest value properties? It's really unfortunate that we didn't think to do it this way. But if you're taking all things into consideration, not just the roadways, if you could totally start from scratch, let's explore this. Okay, so what we have in the middle is, this is a major freeway. I'm talking 4 lanes. Make it short, make it so that even if there was a disaster in the city, people would be able to get out of here with some sort of grace. But this is a major freeway, 4 or 5 lanes, okay? And what you're seeing here, you may be able to see these circles. There's circles all over the place, all these circles. In particular, around these major freeways, there are these circles. So these are the off-ramps, but every major intersection in the city is a roundabout. It circulates. You converge onto a circular roadway, a roundabout. Okay, and these are going to be big and broad, so trucks can go through. There's going to be no limitations. You're going to totally commit the space to making sure that these are can flow and handle the amount of traffic that they're going to be handling. Especially here, right in the middle. This is a major design element, a major structure that's going to require, this is going to be a big investment. I mean, all of these are, but especially the bigger ones, especially the ones around the freeway. And you'll also see them off of the freeway. We'll talk about these roads in a minute. Okay, so because from all the data I have seen, and just from experiencing these, driving through a roundabout versus having to come to a stop, it just makes total sense. It makes things flow so much more efficiently, they're safer, and I just hope that we, whenever there's an opportunity to redesign, and if there's enough space, and space is a factor, a lot of major intersections in cities across the United States, there just wouldn't be enough room to have a roundabout that would really function and be able to handle that amount of traffic without it actually making it worse. There's just not enough space. You need to have the space. But if you could start over, and if you have the room to do it, implementing a roundabout, I think, can make all the difference in the world. So also, you may be able to see that the thick lines, the freeways, are outlined in green. So this is a major pedestrian and bicycle paths. They outline all of the freeways. And this is really cool. The whole idea here is, okay, you want to make your city walkable and bikeable, which I think that's super important to decreasing the traffic and just making a city more beautiful, more livable, more enjoyable. You need to be able to walk from one end of the city to the other, or have the ability, okay, if you work and live in a city, you should be able to get just about anywhere in that city without having to use a car, if you didn't really want to. But you have to design for that. And in a lot of American cities, we were totally committed to the car, and it makes it really dangerous for, the danger comes in. Now the problem is when pedestrian and bicycle traffic is intersecting with vehicular traffic. It's really dangerous. It makes it a high skill activity to ride your bike through the city. Well, all of that can be eliminated by having there be no intersection, or at least having there be some major roadways for pedestrians and for bicycles that do not intersect at all with vehicular traffic. And so you can do this right on the outside of the major freeways. And actually these other roads, which these are these are major inner city roadways. Each of these can also be outlined with bike and pedestrian paths that do not intersect with the vehicular traffic. But of course, this is going to cost money. This is a significant investment because think about how many bridges you're going to have to build. Yeah, so every time you come here, you're on the bike path, you're going to have to build either an underpass or an overpass so that these don't intersect. And that's a significant investment. But if you have the means to do it, I think it's incredibly worthwhile, and it will pay dividends for a century or more, as long as the city is maintained. Establishing the city in this way will enable there to be incredible flow, and you'll have every option to get from point A to point B. You have multiple options. Talking really quickly about what do these major roadways look like? Well, these, again, I don't think you want to have any. This is where you want to invest your money in transportation. And look at the impact here. See if you could measure the amount of space that the blue lines, that the roadways are taking up using this design. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is these are significant roads as well. 2 to 3 lane roads with turnouts, multiple lanes, so that if there's an accident, traffic keeps flowing. There's plenty of space for the buses to operate, because that's a major element of the city that I'll talk about in a minute, and to unload and drop off. And again here, these intersect at roundabouts. All of them intersect at roundabouts. So buses. One thing you'll notice about this, commonly we think of, when we're thinking about green design for metropolitan areas, a lot of people think about rail. And I think that the investments that have been made up to this point, like if you look at the European way of getting around, it's tremendous. And I think since those elements are in place, maintaining them makes sense. But if you're starting from scratch, I'm really not that huge on rail. I actually think that you can do it more efficiently if you actually do just design for motor vehicles to be the primary mode of transportation. I'm not going to get into airplanes. I'm not going to get into, if it was a large enough area, I would say that you also need to have the airport there. But for this, there's no railway. I'm not messing with railway. I actually think it's too expensive, and it's just not efficient enough. I think you can be far more efficient. If you're looking at getting from people to point A to point B within a city, and also from city to city, I think actually a well-designed bus system is the way to go. And so at each of these, these circles representing the roundabouts on the roadways, these are also places, these are the places where you want to focus all activities around transportation. These are like the transportation hubs. Okay, so also an element of, at each of these points, you're going to have a major bus stop. You're going to make sure that you have plenty of space for the buses to pick up and drop off, make it safe, make it accessible, and make it flow at each of these points. And also, so these roadways, you really want to commit right up front to not having there be too much traffic, so that even at rush hour, the traffic has got to be at a minimum, which requires plenty of space on the roads, 3 lanes each side, if needed. And if you get farther out from the city, like out here, this could be 2 lanes or even 1 lane, but in the middle, these are going to be major roadways. But this doesn't even have to be a problem. Vehicular traffic, if you designed it this way, I don't even think it would be a problem, because the other element of this is, because you have, so now pay attention to the white here, and you're going to see these kind of circles with lines through it, okay? And what this is, it's the urban, it's the area designated for unlimited urban development. This is the place where you want to concentrate all of your growth. And you'll notice that it's right in the center, and it's closely related to the circles, the transportation hubs. So around all of the transportation hubs, this is where you designate and you encourage high development and dense development. And you'll notice that, you see out in the middle here, there's no dense development out in the middle you can't walk to any transportation hub, or you can't drive and get to the freeway efficiently from this point either. It's out in the middle of nowhere. So we don't need to densely populate that area. That's where the city comes into play, and that's where the ground rules come into play. This area is for light development only. And that can be encouraged, but just no dense developments around there. And the last element you'll see is the green, and this is designated for open space. Now this could be a number of things. It could be for the parks, it could just be for recreation, it can be just kept as forest. It could also be designated for agriculture. And one idea that I think is kind of cool is if, as a city, you had, one of the things that I think is really important is that we prioritize we recognize high priority, high value agricultural land. And this design that I made, this isn't 2D, it's not in 3D, and there's not rivers and hills that you would have to design around all of this. Okay, this is assuming this is just flat, but you never have that situation. And I could talk more another time about how you would want to interact with and build around water and bodies of water, but I'll just say this for today. If you recognize that there is land that's got high value for agricultural use, you do not build on it. You do not build on it. There's plenty of room, there's plenty of spaces that are lower value for agricultural use, and you can build on those. But do not build. Oh, it's heartbreaking to think about in New Jersey. You look at the story of New Jersey as an example, and this happened also in Connecticut, all around that sort of region, and some of the agricultural land that was built over. To try to calculate the loss of that is really difficult, but it's really potentially very high. So going forward, before you do anything, you assess the land particularly for the natural value of it. and you build on the lowest value land. You can build near the high value land, but you just gotta preserve it. Okay, so we're assuming this greener area, let's say this is really good for agriculture. So what you would want to do, what you could do as a city, is just make it a community. Well, you could do one of two things. You could contract out to a farm, or you could have it be sort of a public thing where, or run by an organization, or it could just be run by the city. But the bottom line is, you've got to grow food on this area. Put it in agriculture, in intensive agriculture, utilize that land. Sustainable agriculture, agricultural practices that will only be regenerating or building the soil and the ecological value of the land. But certainly have it be in practice, because does it make sense to, it makes the most sense to grow as much of the food as close to where the people are, the eaters, as you possibly can. So if you see that there's that high agricultural land right here, then put it to use. But besides that, and look at this, the whole idea, the other idea here is, and you can see that these green parts, they like swoop in and out. We all want to live close to nature, right? I think, well, that's me